Stand up for righteousness. Stand up for justice. Stand up for truth.
I truly believe that thoughts are the greatest vehicle to change.
We do not care whether the cat is black or white, as long as it can catch mice.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Victory in spite of all terror. Victory however long and hard the road may be.
To those waiting with bated breath for that favorite media catchphrase, the U-turn, I have only one thing to say. U-turn if you want to. The ladies not for turning.
Say not always what you know, but always know what you say, is a quote from the fourth emperor Claudius, who during his reign made Britain a province. With the construction of the Roman road network, the tabernae first appeared in Britain, which evolved into the public houses or pubs we are now familiar with. I thought this was an appropriate quote for our guest today, someone who paved a way in the hotels, tourism and leisure asset industry, who has been at the helm of some of Australia's most high-profile hospitality and gaming index property businesses. Our guest is Andrew Jolliffe, Managing Director and co-founder of HTL Property, a leading boutique brokerage firm. HTL Property specialises in investment sales, marketing and advice across the hospitality industry, including pubs, clubs, hotel and resort accommodation, as well as other hospitality assets. Prior to establishing HTL Property, Andrew owned and operated the market-leading hospitality property business within the Ray White Group. He also previously held senior executive roles, including Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director of National Leisure and Gaming Limited, Managing Director of Grant Samuel Private Equity Hospitality Fund, and General Manager of Palace Leisure Group. Hello and welcome to another episode of No Limitations, a show where we speak to elite world-class performing men and women and unlock the secrets and influences that have shaped their destinies and that you could apply to your own life. For our first-time listeners from all over the world, please don't forget to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform. And for our listeners in Canada, Hong Kong and United Kingdom, a big hello. I am your host, Greg Robinson, Managing Partner of Blenheim Partners, Executive Search and Board Advisory. In this episode, Andrew, having personally overseen the acquisition or divestment of hundreds of valuable hotel, leisure or tourism assets, shares insights into an industry brimming with opportunity, a unique proposition in what is a core feature of the Australian way of life. We are treated to fascinating stories throughout his career, having started at one of Sydney's most popular beachfront venues to now leading the premier specialist agency in the country. So sit back and enjoy No Middle Ground. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Greg.
How's the old reflexes going?
Old.
Yeah, you are. Look, I only recently asked the question, Andrew. There's a bit of a rumour going around. You're a bit of a superstar young footballer many years ago.
Yeah, look, that sounds like a rumour, Greg. But good research there. There was a bit of time on the park, but superstars are. Yeah, that's probably not an accurate reflection.
Yeah, but didn't you back yourself and get yourself all the way to England?
Yeah, I did do that. With the assistance of my parents at the time as an 18-year-old, as I recall, flying across the other side of the country and having a crack. Yeah.
Which club did you wind up having?
Luton Town.
Luton Town,
just north of England.
Yeah.
Not the prettiest place on the planet, but it was a good first stop for me to have a go.
And how far did you go, Andrew, on it?
Well, so was on a train and trial with the first division with the team,
Which is equivalent to what Premier League these days.
Premier League these days. That's right. Yeah. So in the year before the Premier League started, it was English first division. Yeah.
Okay.
We're easily the worst club.
Yeah, well, okay. But you got to start somewhere.
Just to be clear, that's right.
And what position were you trialling out for?
I was a midfielder.
Oh, were you really?
I was a midfielder.
So
yeah.
you could use both your left and your right foot. Huh?
I could more so my left, but I could. You sound like a football fan.
Oh, I love my football. And I look, very rarely do we get someone of this sort of ilk come and sit down with us.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've been available for some time.
Yeah. Just on that, what was it like turning up to seeing the big wide world? You know, mum and dad aren't there. You're all of 18. You've obviously backed yourself. That's pretty scary stuff.
Do you know what? You're absolutely right, and I think when I think about that period, in my life, I think I've actually, repeated that sort of feeling of putting yourself in in a situation where, potentially is foreign to you, and you're quite clearly out of your depth, and I actually can viscerally, remember walking into Kenilworth Road to those offices.
Yeah.
To no great fanfare, which you won't be surprised, and just sort of introducing myself and saying, sort of, I'm here for this trial. Let's do it, and feeling that I was hugely out of weight class, but enjoying it, all the same.
So your takeaways? What are the big takeaways for you,
Greg? I think the big takeaways are that for me about that experience are these, that this is an iterative process, life. So if you sort of want everything to be scripted and sort of conforming, then I think you might be sadly disappointed about how it all plays out. But I think the other point for me is that without finding out about that sort of feeling where your stomach drops and wondering whether you should be there, I'm not sure you can really grow as a person. So, as I said, that feeling I've had several times since, in my life, and so I wouldn't change anything.
Okay, now, from what I understand, you're heralded from the bush. Is that correct?
Yeah, from the bush, from up around the Tamworth area. Both my mum and dad from up around that area. So.
And did Dad own the old sports store? Is that right?
Yeah, he did. He did.
Oh, our research is unbelievable.
So, that's exactly right. So there was no shortage of runners and football boots. Yeah.
So now you're a successful businessman. How did that story kick off? So you go over there as an 18-year-old. You go and trial. Obviously, you then came back.
Yeah, came back.
You put yourself on the edge. You think, okay, I like that. Yeah. And then what happens after that, Andrew?
Greg, I thought, like young Australian men, maybe I thought, what else can I do to sort of, take something to a bit of an edge in my life, and I thought about some military experience, and then pursued that. And I had a similar feeling on day one as I did walking into a first division sporting franchise, and a similar outcome now that I think about it. But look, I went from there to just throwing myself into some university, but also mainly to some hands-on work around the place. Our family, not my immediate generation above me, not my parents, but their families had both had reasonable histories in the pub industry. So,
oh really?
Yeah, we're not we're certainly not by no stretch from a family pub dynasty, but we'd had experience in that field. So it was something that's pretty natural, I think, to country kids anyway, to work and to city kids as well, but to work in a pub. So I did that, and remember fondly doing it at places like Jackson's on George in the Rocks, and the Metropolitan Hotel, or the Courthouse, or lots of great old institutions around the city.
And would you start off at the very basics, or
very basics, mate? Picking up glasses, wiping ashtrays. Peter Byrne singing, Neil Diamond hits in the bar there on a Friday night, and taking out the garbage and fighting off the rats down there, near the harbour. So right from the bottom, which is, to be honest, not that foreign to most people who start in that industry that aren't from a pub family, so to speak. So did that, and then worked away from that point to bars and management, and then a bit of security, and then ended up at a place in Coogee called the Palace.
What's kept you in it? What attracted you to So like you said, it's a long hours sometimes, pretty unsociable hours as well. Can be not the easiest of careers to pursue.
I think, Greg, it's either in you or it's not that industry, and I think people can do it for periods of time. But there's something about that industry that I liked, and I don't know I think it was a combination of a number of things. I think it's actually the interaction with people, whether they be staff or patrons, and there was plenty of opportunities to interact, obviously with both, or whether it's just understanding what a grassroots business looks like, and that's a grassroots business in its purest form.
Yeah, right.
So I think that was attractive to me. Let's be clear, we weren't operating on people. We were just pouring and providing beers in a safe, clean environment to do it. In fact, not always safe and clean. Now that I think about that too, but. I think it's an attractive thing. Australians have got a bit of a magnetism towards pubs, whether you work in them or you want to go to them, or you have a favourite local or whatever it is. And we've seen that recently with the end of the pandemic and how people have been so keen to get back there. I'm one of 4 boys, so it was a place where I could also provide some employment opportunities for them, and then keep them working, with me for a number of years in the early days, and their mates and other friends, from the regional areas, looking for a job. So, there are certainly worse places you can work than a pub. So, yeah.
Coogee Bay Palace, that was a bit of a springboard, was it?
Total springboard. Yeah, I think I was licensee there, from probably 21 or 22 years old or something like that. Way too young. But it was good. I, in that venture, had a guy who owned it, that very successful banker who owned it.
So why did he back you? Not as if you know him or anything like that. You're a bush boy coming down here, and you're got the network pretty well. Why did he back you?
Oh, look, I think that I think he probably saw in me someone who was prepared to do the hours, prepared to work, had some ability in that area without being too dramatic, and was honest and just prepared to have a go. And I guess what I didn't have, which was funding to have my own pub, he had, and maybe some of those sort of hands-on attributes given his role elsewhere. He couldn't afford to provide the venture I could make up for. So it wasn't, look, in that respect, it was a good relationship, and we went on and acquired and I ran for him 3 or 4 significant hotels in Sydney and King's Cross and Parramatta and other places. Yeah.
And what did that lead to then, Andrew?
Led to me joining up with a very famous Australian pub family, the Laundies, and we myself and the two sons, Stu and Craig, Arthur's 2 sons, set up a pub fund with a bank, Grant Samuel, with an investment bank, and we went and raised equity in a market, in the sort of 2005, and acquired a number of hotels, and ended up at the end of that process operating about just under 50 pubs nationally.
Significant.
As a group, which is significant, which is a lot different to running, one pub, even something as big as the Palace in Coogee.
Was this the first time anything had been done like this before? In sense of being
no, I don't think it was, Greg, but I think it was certainly the first time we'd been involved in anything like that. But what we I guess were able to achieve was to grow something very quickly. I mean, we grew that in a matter of years. Which is now, a number of those hotels still exist in a similar sort of portfolio under different badging. But that was a great experience for me, and ended up, turning into being vested into a listed company, which we had some exposure to as well.
So on the commercial side, commercial acumen, that you had to pick that up fairly swiftly. Then I would have thought.
Yeah, I think so, and I think, look, again, one of those things, a little bit like walking into a first division sporting franchise. You pick things up quickly. That particular sporting franchise only had an AstroTurf pitch. I don't know how that didn't occur to me before I got there, but I didn't have AstroTurf boots, so that was tricky for the first few sessions. And in much the same way as some of the things we did. When we're running the thing, we learn on the go, but we're not unintelligent guys, and we picked it up quickly. But yeah, baptism of fire stuff, fear of failure stuff, all those things that drive you. We're pretty entrepreneurial as well, so we're in it to better our position, financially, and those that came along the journey with us. So, but you're right, there were some gaps in our knowledge base, and we had to close those quickly. But we also had to know what we didn't know, and backfill that with people around us that did.
What do you like on the picking the right people around you?
I'm getting better, and I don't think I was ever poor at it, but I feel like I'm getting better, and I think that's one thing that comes with a bit of time on the road and bit of grey hair, that you realise from a very early age that you in business anyway, I think, and the successful people seem to, that you don't want to be the smartest or wealthiest person you know. And secondly, things that you're not good at, you need to make sure there are people around you who are. So. I'm a big believer in giving people the opportunity.
Oh, yeah?
Big believer, yeah, and intrinsically, if people are genuine people and have a willingness to learn and a willingness to have a proper crack at something, they can be molded into different forms of themselves, more successful forms. And I think I think about my own journey. That feels like I'm a bit like that. So therefore, I've got to kind of take that view with other people that I surround myself with.
So the journey kept going. You want to talk us through the next couple of steps?
Yeah. So we sort of kept going, ran a listed vehicle, for a few years as the CEO, and then spun out of that in sort of 2010. Met a family who's synonymous with the real estate industry in Australia, the White family, who are the owners and operators, fourth generation, maybe fifth generation now, owners and operators of the Ray White network, and fantastic people, real people of real substance, and people that I met socially who suggested that this might be something that I would consider, which is in effect agency work, and it didn't occur to me that was a great idea, to be blunt, at the time, but I'm glad I did afterwards.
What was the approach for you, in the sense of what were you trying to set out to achieve with the Ray White family?
Look, I think they saw that agency is really about networking. Is really about a lot of the things that had been successful levers in the in my hotel operation background, which was just long hours, an element, a level of integrity that is maintained over long periods, which is what that family is known for. And I think they saw that, or potentially saw that in me, which is why they made the suggestion. And I thought that it was something that I wanted to try. And again, sort of indexing back to that earlier statement about this whole life, or this whole professional journey being iterative. If here we go again, throw yourself in at the deep end, and glad I did. And 10 years later, I'm still in that asset class, and performing and doing that with a number of really good people around me.
So you're a big believer in the play the long game, are you?
Massive believer in that. Yeah.
So what's that mean?
Well, I think that means that you don't take decisions that are based on anything particularly short term. So you're trying to elevate yourself always above whatever there might be a short term gain for, or a decision that might bring you, something that you has a legitimacy or a life, expectancy for whatever the win is, or the benefit is, that is not going to survive, any great longevity. So that's what that means to me. But it also means, take decisions, for the broader term. So if you need to make decisions because that it's going to be a decision you'll have to take at some point, that's the antithesis of that. Take the long-term view and make those decisions based on that.
And my understanding, Andrew, is you were the number one sales guy internationally for the group. That's hell of an achievement.
You know what? That is actually a very pleasing achievement. Yeah, because that again, 10,000 employees in that family business. They're the biggest. Not all salespeople, obviously, but they're the largest in Australasia. And I think it's important to note, though, that the type of assets that were being sold were lumpier than units in regional Australia.
Yeah.
But notwithstanding, very, very happy to have achieved that. Felt a little bit, a little bit uneasy at the start about that, because I know there's a lot of those guys that work in that organisation do some phenomenal things and sell multiple properties, and but as I say, at a smaller asset price. But yeah, Greg, that's a in a funny way, that's something that I take great comfort in that history.
What do you reckon was the secret to the success?
Well, Greg, I wish I could tell you in a couple of simple sentences, and again, I want to say to you, this is not high level science or anything like that, but it really is a sum of the parts thing. The market was running strong. The assets were lumpy in size. But Greg, I've worked in professionally in Sydney for 20 or 30 years in an asset class broadly, in the hospitality and property based asset class.
Yep.
I must have, by virtue of that, several hundred close contacts in a professional sense. So if you've performed as I've suggested you should over that period, and you've operated and conducted yourself in a manner there are some great leverage points there you've got where you can actually network to get a result, and I think ultimately that's the the outcome was we knew a lot of people, we knew our business, we worked very hard, and we did it with a level of integrity, and maybe the benefit of knowing both sides of the transaction. So having had a history operating. I knew what vendors were really concerned about. I knew what purchasers were really looking for. So being able to marry those two things, maybe slightly differently to our competition, certainly helped us. Certainly helped us.
You studied the competition?
To the point of incoherence.
Do you really?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I heard you're into the detail. You don't miss much from what I gather.
I like detail. Yeah, I like detail, and that's that's from having worked for people who are some of the most detailed, nauseatingly detailed creatures on the planet. Have made me that way. But yeah, I like detail.
Okay, so you had a terrific period of time. 10 years, did you say?
Yeah, 10 years it's been. Yeah.
Part of the company.
Set up a new entity.
Okay.
Called HTL, but did that with the White family, so invited them into that to continue that journey. And invited is probably not the right word. Discussed with them a continuation of the journey under a different brand.
Yep.
And in doing so, significantly amplified the number of people that worked in the group now to around 20 nationally.
Okay.
And did it at a time where I thought that the professional services market in property wanted a more boutique offering.
Yes.
As with a number of other, you would see that, no doubt, in the course of your daily work in terms of law firms or accounting firms. And boutique to me doesn't mean cute. Boutique can't mean, lacking power.
Yeah.
So boutique to me means agility, and in fact means more concentrated, power or efficacy. So that's why we did it, and look, we've been blessed with the support that the market has shown for us. We enjoy a favourable market share nationally, and you continue to do so, and plan to continue to do so, and so that's 3 years in the making.
What's the big successes so far, Andrew?
Big successes?
Yeah, with HTL.
Look, I think big successes are we had a mandate, and internally driven mandate to enjoy a minimum of 50% of the market share, which is pretty audacious when you think about some of our competition.
Absolutely.
But asset class specific, and we've done that in the every year in the 3 years. So we know that success to us looks like a couple of things, but at a revenue line, we know that success means as much or more revenue than the combined sum of our competition.
Wow,
so in other words, 50% or more, and to do that means success to us. The other thing I think for us, getting through the first 12 or 18 months of any new business is a daunting prospect. But to do that, that to us is an objective met, and growing the team, but also growing the offering. So not only growing the same channel of offering service, but to grow out into HTL Capital, which is a debt and equity purveyor and debt and equity sourcer for the market, which we've done, and as well to accommodation. And we've got some other ideas about how we want to grow the services to our client base, as well.
So you want to talk about the actual business itself. Do you cover all of Australia, Andrew? Where do you specialise in?
We cover all of Australia. So we specialise in traditional hotels, which other people might call pubs.
Yep.
We specialise in accommodation hotels, which are from leisure assets to experiential sort of boutique, small key operations, to 5-star hotels, which we've got some experience in transacting. And as well as the debt and capital origination, both from senior debt perspective and also non-bank providers, so mezzanine or pref equity providers. So we're enjoying some good market share there as well.
And I think you said earlier in the year, Andrew, that we will see the greatest period of market activity on record. What makes you say that?
Well, I see the data in real time. It's the real reason I say that. But I'm also a big believer in where this industry is going, and I can see the support that the major lenders are providing it. I can see the legislative headwinds that are now benign, largely because we've got some great representation as a cohort. There's some political representation there from a few groups that put the industry and put the asset class in a good space.
Yep.
And I just know that the demand for hospitality, but property-backed hospitality assets of all manner it far outweighs any supply that we can deliver. So that tells me that things are obviously going to be prosperous. But Greg, the industry, has done, I think, in the last couple of years, 1.3 billion and 1.6 billion annually in transactions.
Wow.
And we're on track to surpass that again this financial year.
Who's buying?
Real mix. So, it's a real mix, but it's, probably still a concentration of historical ownership, long-term ownership, multi-generation ownership.
It is it?
It is. And, there are some very well financed, very well credentialed corporates in the marketplace, like Redcape, like Endeavour,
yep.
like AVC. And those guys are certainly enjoying more than their market share. But it's some of the old family names all around the country that are able to move very quickly to add assets into to conduct DD quickly, which is what's giving them that chronological advantage in terms of transacting. And there's a weight of private equity capital too on the periphery trying to get in. Absolutely, but it's it's a tough space to get a foothold in.
Some of the prices are quite astronomical, and it's based on the property value, Andrew, isn't it?
I think it's based on property value, but I think it's also based on these things are unique. And if we're talking specifically about pubs, these things are unique creatures. They're often on a high street, in wherever they are, whether it's in George Street in Sydney or whether it's in regional Queensland.
Yep.
They're on the high street.
Yep.
They're on a corner.
Yep.
Often.
Yep.
More often than not, in
yep.
fact. They're large format. They are either have the capacity to be, augmented into something with another use, so a mixed use, or they've got alternative use rights because they're so lumpy, so they can be another commercial use. And you compare that to another asset class, and without being too pejorative about other asset classes, you compare that to, an industrial shed, which can only ever be an industrial shed, quite likely. But these things can be lots of other things. I think the other thing about them, Greg, is they're such good cash flow businesses. So, they're easy to wind down and easy to wind up. There's no trade debtors. You get very, I don't know what your experience is, but mine is you don't get a lot of trading terms at a pub. You've got about 11 seconds, I think, to pay for the product. Otherwise, you're out.
Yep.
And so they, as a cash flow model, they're brilliant. They the product, whether it's a Sahi or whatever it is, you effectively got it on consignment because you've got trading terms 7 days, 14 days to pay.
Yep.
So these things are simple business models. They're not easy to run, but they're simple business models, and that's good. That's huge attraction for for capital in wherever it sits in the capital stack, whether it's a debt or equity instrument or wherever it is.
Yep.
There's a quick return on these things. And the barriers to entry is so high. There's only a certain number of hotels and hotel licenses.
Yep.
Councils require certain applications to be approved before you can. So the barriers to someone turning up next door to you and saying, "I'm going to take your trade," far higher than other industries.
Yeah, right, okay.
And that is a frustration of people in terms of wanting to grow things, but it's also the great protectionism that they enjoy. And I think all of those things, are why we're seeing asset prices do what they're doing. But I don't think they're finished. I think there's further contraction to come.
Oh, do you really?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
So where's the pubs going in terms of imagination? From when you started all those years ago, and then big break with the Palace, and now what's happening now? Are we going to be building up, building out? Is there going to be different customer service? What's going to happen, Andrew?
Let's talk about the Palace, and apologies to people who don't know it, but on the northern end of Coogee Beach, the old aquarium. But let's talk about that. I mean, I thought it was easily the greatest hotel in the world when I was running it, which won't surprise you, but turns out it probably wasn't. But let's just have a look at what's happened there now. With the Merivale Group and what Justin Hems and his and his family and his company have done there. I mean, that is the greatest example I think you can see of where to in this industry. And for me, it's about elongation of trading hours. So that business that we ran down there, talked to a certain element of the community and talked to an element of that community for a period of time. And it wasn't for, much more than probably 6 or 8 hours a day. You go down to that property in Coogee now at 8 or 9 a.m. in the morning, and there's a plethora of prams down there, and there's people catching up and having coffees, and it's creche-like activity down there. But but there will be somebody in that venue the whole day and feel comfortable. I could never get people to feel comfortable at 10 a.m. in the Palace in those days, and so clearly wasn't at the same level of operational capacity as Justin. But that's a great example, Greg. So how do you provide an experience in a venue that talks to so much broader section of the community and for longer hours? That's and at a higher delivery level. I mean, you don't have to think back too far where you would question whether you would take your your family or your girlfriend or your boyfriend into a particular venue or into a pub.
Yep.
Now you just wouldn't have second thoughts, and in fact, some of these venues are some of the safest, most enjoyable places you can find yourself in a retail experience.
Are you surprised it took so long for someone to start doing this? Because a lot of these pubs in the past have been pretty basic shells.
Am I surprised? Look, I don't know. I think some of these operators here that we have here in Australia, to be absolutely blunt, are at the forefront of what's happening in that hospitality space anywhere in the world.
You really believe that?
Absolutely, yeah. So, some of these venues, and I've spoken about Maryvale, but there are plenty of other examples. And but you think about those venues, on that scale. You might have a Balthazar in Spring Street in New York, a restaurant which is people are very fond of, or some of the groups out of LA or SLS, those guys, people in Las Vegas, McAnally and other places, and people in London, and there's some, but are they on the scale that we're seeing in Australia and Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, and even Perth? Are they on that sort of scale? And are they executing at the same level consistently and across so many different sort of outlets? And they're perfecting it. So no, I stand corrected, but I don't think there's anybody doing it the way some of these guys that we've got here. So I find we're very lucky in that regard. What's
it like in the bush, Andrew? I haven't been out there for a little bit, obviously, because of the pandemic. So how are they all going? And is the average publican out there, when we get, as we move forward, does the average publican out there actually make a buck, or is it?
Yeah, they do.
Actually do.
Yeah,
they're
not
not tied to it.
Yeah.
I always thought most pubs didn't make a lot of money.
Well, you know what? There was a time when they didn't. But we let me tell you what's happening in the bush at the moment. It's green. People have revisited, reimagined it because they've gone there because we haven't been able to jump on planes and go elsewhere. So the Hunter Valleys of the world, if we're talking, close to Sydney, or the Bowrals of the world, or the Mudgees, or the of the world, certainly Byron.
Yes.
We've all reconnected with these places, and some people haven't reconnected; they've just connected. So they've gone there for the first time and realised this is a part of our country that we haven't seen, and it's a good part of the country. So it's green. You've seen what's happening with agribusiness and agribusiness prices. Booming. You've seen what's happened with product off the land in terms of cattle prices, in terms of grain prices.
Yep.
So do you know what? Notwithstanding some droughts and then some floods and then some fire, those areas arguably have never been better, and the local publican in those towns is absolutely flying at the moment, and deservedly so. And what that also means now is there's great interest from Sydney publicans to acquire country assets, and which forces the prices to improve, and it really is a good story.
And we're still going down the gastro. Is that really popular these days?
Yeah,
or
you must have food. So you must have food.
What are the principles of making a good pub then, Andrew?
Look, I think the principles are making people feel comfortable in there. So whatever the target market you're going for, people have got to be believable. Safe and clean. You would think those things weren't optional, but those still, they're both still high on people's on people's kind of criteria for wanting to go to a place. And then what are you offering? What's your point of difference? So is your point of difference a food point of difference? Is your point of difference a sort of entertainment, which is now coming back?
Is it coming back?
It is coming back, yeah. So there's a renaissance there in terms of live music and other forms of entertainment in hotels. full facility is another one, Greg. So, providing a couple of food options maybe within the one premises, depending on the size. Providing a gaming function, that's a big part of a lot of people's, social outlet, what they want to do, but not doing it in a way that any, one of those, particular revenue streams dominates all the others. That's another way. And I think, when I think back to my time again at the Palace, we had a, if you weren't sort of 18 to 24 and it wasn't midnight on a Saturday night and you weren't into really sticky sugar drinks, and we probably didn't appeal to you.
Right.
Thankfully, there were enough people who did like those things.
Yeah.
But I think that's what makes us, and consistency, Greg. Knowing that every time you go to that place, you're going to be treated in the same way, and the product you get is going to be exactly the same as you got before, and that's how all great businesses perform.
Andrew, we're starting to see out, and particularly in the countryside, the publicans make an effort towards the family. You think that's going to be successful and long lasting? I
think it's imperative. So let's think about the typical. It doesn't even have to be regional. Typical family that want to go to this venue now. So someone who is very comfortable spending a few hours at the pub of preference with their family. A great distraction for anyone who's had kids is what are your kids up to, and how they're being occupied, and some sort of throwaway half broken Nintendo or some other dangerous piece of equipment to satisfy kids for is not the solution. So you're right. You've seen now these fantastic activity centres that are attended to hotels all around the place, and some of the convenience food chains had done it beforehand. But yeah, look, that's happening in pubs, but it doesn't have to be big plastic sort of slides with in all the primary colours. It can be other things. I mean, I think there can be. I think I've seen some pubs with bocce, and there's petting zoos at daytime in pubs again to elongate the hours. So that's another big thing. How do you bring the kids in so that they're comfortable as well?
Yes.
So that their other family members can spend longer there.
What's the future for the clubs then, Andrew? Is pubs going to start to take the lead here for the next few years?
I think there'll always be a place for clubs. Clubs occupy a slightly different, perform a slightly different role in the community, but there'll always be a place for clubs. But they really are a different beast. They do a great job in the support and the sponsorship they give to local communities, and they're a meeting place. But there's it's a different experience going to a pub. At a club, you've got to be a member, or you've got to live outside the area. At a pub, there's arguably greater anonymity, so it's not the same sharing of information when you walk in the door of a pub.
True.
And some people just want that. Some people don't want to have to jump through all the hoops, and others clearly do. So I think there'll always be a home for both. But based on some of my commentary around some of the operators we have here and some of the large format offerings, I think you'll see some transference of club patrons to some of these larger format pub offerings.
Running the business of a pub, a lot more sophisticated than it was many years ago.
Totally.
Is it?
Yeah.
But
totally.
is it really, or is it really still understanding?
Well, the back of house
patrons?
No, you're right. Well, it's a good question. The back of house is far more sophisticated. So there's less cash around. So there's greater reliance then on sort of money in transit and other sort of technical reporting products that are required. There's a greater expectation from government authorities about those matters too, AUSTRAC and the like. So this is a different level of compliance than was ever required previously. So it is particularly more sophisticated. But as you allude to, the front of house and running a good pub and attracting people and being a good host, the game's exactly the same. I mean, there's some other levers you need to pull, but fundamentally, that game, the front of house game, is in terms of how you might conduct yourself running a pub is exactly the same.
And how's the relationships with governments? In the state governments, you're noticing they've been stronger, or they've been fragmented or fractured over this period of time. How have you found it?
Oh, look, the visibility that I have on that is that it's probably never been better. So I mean, again, it's a funny quirk to see politicians sort of talk about, well, this is the vaccination rate, and this is when we can effectively go back to a pub. It's it's one of the 4 items that are discussed. So they realise, as does this the community, Greg. it almost had in the CBD in Sydney that kind of post-war type feeling about it, and I would imagine that's what it, thankfully never had to experience it, but I would imagine that would be what it was like, and so what do people do? They want to be around people where they're comfortable. They want to disaggregate quite often and go to where their community hubs are, and that's what pubs have been, for centuries. And so they want to do that, and politicians, are intelligent people, obviously by nature, and they know that, they can see that. So to disenfranchise your relationship with the pub industry is, I would think would be a myopic view to take from a political perspective, and I think that the relationship's never been better.
Immigration, is that having any impact on the pub scene versus the club scene versus the hotel scene?
No, I think no difference between those three, but an impact, because there's a lot of that workforce that provided a real resource to employers that just aren't here, and so that's something that is being felt. I mean, there are restrictions in terms of the number of people that can dine at restaurants currently, but there are greater restrictions as well over the top based on staff numbers to actually service the patronage, and I think a number of those staff have gone home.
Andrew, look, many a proud Australian has had the dream, I guess, to own their own pub. You're the cold face. How hard is it? Yeah, look, it's not particularly easy, but I tell you what, when we get asked that question a lot, as you might expect, and I think we really just identify with people the reasons for wanting to own it, because the novelty of owning any business, really, unless you sort of deep dive into the fundamental reasons as to why and how we're going to achieve this, important to know. So we would get an idea of obviously capacity. I mean, what sort of value are we talking about? And then we'd think about management experience, or what we need to draw upon externally if we need to fill a gap there, whether it be a operational, managerial, lending, structuring, those sort of things. But look, there are literally tens of thousands of pubs in Australia, literally. Yep.
And so they're still accessible to people. And the good news is that all the major lenders have an affection for the asset class, which is borne out by their desire to continue to lend handsomely by comparison to other asset classes in terms of the metrics, the LVRs, and the rates provided. So. This is an industry that remains accessible to people. Now we sold a hotel in Sydney for $70 million at a sub 5% cap rate as a freehold going concern, which means with management risk, which is a record. So that's the record, certainly of a pub of that scale nationally ever in terms of a yield.
And why do they pay so much for it, Andrew?
I think it's a function of where people believe they can take a business. I don't know anyone who buys a pub who doesn't think they can improve it. Yeah, nobody buys it to take it backwards, and very few people buy it to maintain, a sort of a homeostasis of the current trade or the historical trade. So everybody has a plan for improving that, and that could be operational, that could be capex driven, it could be some market carry, they could be picturing, could be all of those things. And so I think about the property that was acquired here in Sydney in the northwest corridor of Sydney, and at that yield. But there's still a decent delta between that yield, even at just sub 5%, and the cost of capital being lent, and it's still a 200 or 300 basis point spread. So it always seems to oscillate wherever the yield, the bid-ask spread. It's always around about a 200 or 300 basis point spread. So it's being maintained at the moment, and opportunities exist. So we'd welcome your call, Greg. Put you into a pub.
You bullish about the economy?
The economy?
Yeah.
Look, I'm not concerned about the economy. I think the the economy is, we're going to enjoy a period for the foreseeable future of low interest rates.
Yep.
We're going to enjoy a period for the foreseeable future of real aggression, retail spending aggression, because people are have been hamstrung for some time. And I think Australia is a prosperous country with many of its, natural resources is and whether that be, rare earth or whether that be agricultural resources, we're in a pretty good position in this part of the world. Does that mean that I don't, have concerns, sort of 10-year horizon type concerns.
Yep.
No, it doesn't mean that, but I'm certainly not going to allow the lack of sight, that sort of far out, determine too greatly what my thoughts are current day. Put it this way: we get asked the question regularly: is now a good time to sell, or is now a good time to buy? And I think without being too lazy in terms of our response, I think the typical answer from us is we've got some pretty good visibility on the next few years. We know what the space looks like. We've got a view that the yields are contracting. We've got a view that assets are more scarce, and we know that legislative headwinds, I think I've mentioned it earlier in this discussion, are benign.
Yeah.
And debt is well priced and available. So if not now, we can't point to a better period of time. So we think this is a really fascinating point in the chronological juncture for the asset class and for all property businesses in Australia.
So you actually really believe that, Andrew?
Absolutely, full conviction.
So who typically rings up, Andrew? Is it a consortium? Is it people like me who've always, like, as per that question, I've always had that interest? What's the normal call?
Greg, we come across people's radars as being a bit different because we are boutique, got great access into family offices around Australia.
Yeah, okay.
So we get huge referral benefits from that. So who's ringing up? Look, a whole raft of people, but people that want a discreet discussion and want to be able to rely upon what we tell them, and that's what we like to think is our point of difference. We know people are going to rely on what we tell them, so we make sure what we're telling them we know we believe in and it enjoys the benefit of accuracy. But we also call people, so we're not waiting for people to call us. We're on the phone. We're pretty active, and it wouldn't be out of the question for the sales agents in our company, irrespective of the asset class they're operating in, to reach out to sort of 20 unique people a day, just to ensure a bit of contextual relevance and let people know we're there, whether it be halcyon days or whether it be the depths of the of the pandemic and the travel restrictions. We were still talking to people in those sort of numbers daily, not disappearing and only waiting to resurface when the going was good again.
Now, I like how you summed up that word boutique. You want to talk me just through a little bit more about that, because Australians are typically very conservative, I've always found, and boutique can mean small, which can be negative in some cases and don't have the firepower. Others would say, if you look at fashion, they dominate because it's the boutiques. Yeah. So do you actually say you call yourself a boutique?
We do. We call ourselves a specialist and a boutique agency, and we do it knowing full well that there may be some ambiguity out there, but we try to close around that ambiguity by acting in a way that's, as I've said, more efficient or more concentrated power. So boutique to me means means agility and sincerity. Boutique to me means not worrying about the stuff that doesn't matter. So we don't worry about stuff that other much larger organisations quite rightly have to worry about. So we everybody at HTL is from a large agency. Everyone's from a large company, so we all know it firsthand.
Okay.
But we can look at it and we can cut swathes through it and say, well, how important is that to us if we right size the offering? How important is it to us to carry all that sort of ballast? And that's what boutique means to me, just being far more effective. So boutique to me is not cute, not small, not an apology, not a trend. It's about accessibility, and that's what we give our clients.
Have you been surprised by what, like you said, you've already got 50% of the market?
No, I haven't been surprised, but I've been pleased, very pleased. So, we know what the product is that we're bringing. We know the sort of acumen we're offering, people, and so surprised is not a word I'd use to describe it. Absolutely grateful and very pleased that that's been the take up. Is really consistent with how we feel. But no, if you set out to dominate a marketplace and you get the right people around you and you prepare a strategy, you should never be surprised if that's the outcome.
When you're choosing the right people, you're in leadership now, Andrew. Like you said, you started many years ago in those classes, running the Palace, and now leading the number one boutique in the country. What type of people do you hire?
I really like entrepreneurs, so I really like people who can think quickly and laterally. So I really like people who back themselves.
Yeah,
I do, and
you see much of it?
Not. It's not prolific, but you know it when you see it. So people who understand that there is, there's a sort of a collegiacy that's required about, a team, for it to be effective as a unit, but have the capacity to maybe bring something else, or maybe suggest something else, or think differently about something, and are not afraid to mention it. So when I see those sort of character traits in people, that real self-starter character trait, they're the people that I gravitate towards, and they're the people that we try and put in our businesses.
So what's the culture like at your organisation? Well, what's the normal sort of day? I know I'm making some calls, I'm engaging with customers or potential customers. Yeah. But what's the glue, Andrew?
I think the glue, the value proposition for me, for the people that work in our organisation, and the same, and it exists with the departmental heads and my partners in the business. And the value proposition is simply this: none of us, and I mean none of us, would be there if not for the financial benefit and the career growth and sustainability of both of those things that we're all seeking. So if we adopt that as being a pretty clear point of our being and turning up every day, then I think that's a really important thing to do. Yeah. The other piece culturally is just to make sure that everybody's pulling in the same direction, and transparency is a big part of that. So got to have some awkward discussions with people, but those discussions are much better had earlier in the piece. There's no committees in our organisation. It's no committees, zero. Yeah. In our world, or in our mind anyway, they're the greatest handbrake on decisions being made, and it's a linear structure too, Greg. We don't we're not hierarchical. I think everybody understands their role, but we're all at a very similar level. So I don't think anybody would consider our organisation either hierarchical or political. And look, that's something that I've learned and seen, great operators and leaders that I've been exposed to, over my career, and not necessarily firsthand, vicariously seen people act and behave in a way. And the ones that are the most effective are the ones that don't get caught up in bureaucracy, don't get caught up in the politics of committee, don't get caught up in much other than action. And great leaders are they lead, and they all lead by example, and they make sure everybody's aware what that looks like, and they make sure everybody's coming along for the ride.
They also call the shots, right? So when it comes to the crunch, Andrew, and the big decisions that got to be made, how do you go about it? What's your process? Do you go and bounce it off your team? You sit back at night and make your own call? How do you go about it?
So I think the key to that for us is we don't ever let it get to a point where it's such a monumental decision that hasn't been socialised. So the key for us is to continually bounce these things off the team, and the team doesn't have to be based upon age or revenue status within the group. The team's the team. So, but we'll continually do that. We'll make sure people are aware of what we're doing, and then we take decisions very quickly. So that whole paralysis piece around getting caught up and having to convene meetings and discussions about large decisions is in and of itself failure to me. That's not where a business needs to be. So I would much prefer to take 4 decisions and eventually arrive at the spot having made them. And I know the team likes that, and I know the team respects that, rather than periods of uncertainty or periods of no decision, and then a very dramatic event where there's got to be lots of weighty discussions. And I think any organisation or sporting team or whatever it is that I've been exposed to, that the people are respectful of people who make decisions, irrespective of concurrence with that decision, or irrespective of whether that decision ultimately turns out to be the right one. People who make decisions enjoy following.
So if I walked into your office and I caught up with most of your team, is there a 3-year plan, 2-year plan? Is it done very differently? Because you mentioned agile as being a boutique. So what is the inspiration to walk into that room?
The inspiration to walk in and join our organisation, or the inspiration is that you will be in an environment, and that is a physical environment and a cultural environment that is the best of breed. So you're going to be exposed to all the significant deals that are happening in the marketplace, or the great majority of them. Yep. Or certainly you're going to be aware of them, even if they're not done in our office. You're going to have full visibility. So we're not cloistering away transactions and ensuring that there's some sort of opaque nature to certain things that happen in the office. So you're going to be exposed to that. You're going to have administration and marketing and support. You're going to have all of those things, which are often first base type requirements, you would think.
Yep.
But our commitment to our people and our environment is that there's not going to be anywhere better. So we're not looking over our shoulder worrying about the cannibalisation of key staff or star performers, because if what we're doing is meeting that self-styled mandate daily, then that's what we know our people can expect. That's what they can expect from us. And we obviously don't always get it right, but we get it fixed very quickly if we find we haven't got it right.
Next 3 years, 5 years, Andrew, HTL, is it going to expand? And if it's going to expand, what's it going to expand to? And what's it look like at scale?
I think, I think there's there are some ideas to grow out the services. So we might look at some other related businesses that might exist. Whether they be asset management or whether they be insurance style things. Yeah. When you have a trusted client base, and you can provide a product, then that's something that I've learned, that you really can offer multiple products.
So you've got the platform in other words, have you?
You've got the platform, and we'll look to do that. We'll look to sort of grow into more people on the ground in other states. But Greg, the reality is we'll do none of those things if the opportunity, the right people to bring on board aren't there. We won't grow for the sake of it. Seen that happen too many times in other businesses where people grow because they think bigger is better, and I think the whole nature of our construction is that better is better, not bigger is better. So if you can't get the right players on the team, then don't do it for the sake of it. So I'd like to think that though in 3 years we might have another business channel and we might have another few teams around the country. But if that's not the case, then we won't go through with that sort of growth strategy for the sake of it.
You still getting that nervous feeling in the stomach these days?
Yeah, from time to time. Yeah, absolutely.
Big deals?
Big deals, or just contemplating or pressing the button on a maybe it is on a growth strategy, or I might be just driving with my 19-year-old twins. Get that feeling with them too.
Regards to looking back, were you mentored well?
Yep, I was mentored well, but I'm not sure anybody realised they were my mentor, and I'm not sure I thought about them as a mentor. But I think I've been exposed to, from my father, who I think was sort of, he, in my mind, he's a great entrepreneur. He's a guy who didn't have the benefit of great schooling or great education or financial support or any of those things, but took himself off and studied law and then at Sydney Uni and then made a career out of amongst other things, Greg, sports stores and legal practice, and a lot of international work that he did. And
oh, really?
When I think about him and from where he the genesis of where he came from, that to me is he's a pure entrepreneur. So that's great mentorship that I enjoyed there. And then David Kingston, who is the managing director at the time of Rothschild's Banks, who I spent 10 years working with. Again as a mentor. He and I enjoyed a workable relationship. But he's not someone that I spend a lot of time with anymore. And but I look back upon my time with him and realise that his fascination with detail and his hard-nosed business acumen has been hugely beneficial to me since those times. And then I think about other people that I've been exposed to. I think about the White family and others, as I've mentioned, and I pick up pieces from these people. But have I had a structured mentor relationship with anybody? No, it's not really my style. But have these people been mentors of mine? Absolutely.
What do you reckon your real strength is, Andrew? Is it understanding people?
Greg, I think it's I like people. So I think I enjoy the company of people. I think I like to think I understand them. I don't get particularly pressured by much. I still have the sinking feeling, but don't feel pressure. And I'm not suggesting that's a character trait that is anything. You know, and that may be a poor character trait now that I think about it. But I look, I'm happy to go down a road, and if I need to change, if it needs an amendment, a sharp amendment or whatever, I'm happy to do it. I certainly shun the thought of putting myself on tram tracks and having it all laid out in front of me. That would be a very limiting existence. So, in terms of character traits, I think I can quickly sum up a situation, and I don't get too hung up if I realise that maybe there's a deviation or a turn required.
Historically, Andrew, the pub game, it seems to be very generational focused. And I guess with that in mind, you've got 2 sons. Is one of them going to take over the reins from you for HTL?
Oh, look, I don't know. I think there'd be a few other people outside my sons that are probably better positioned to do that than they are. But look, in terms of being involved in the industry, in terms of being, I hope if they want to do that, then I hope they do that. But I've certainly got no aspirations for them following in my footsteps. I mean, when I think about my footsteps, it's a 2-step. So, I wouldn't be encouraging them necessarily to do that. Both of them have a reasonable business acumen. Both of them studying at university, and they'll go and do whatever pleases them, and I'll be very happy for them to do that. One of them's working in the industry at the moment, actually, down at the Palace or the Pavilion, and the other one's doing some work with us. But you know what? At the age of 19, I could not have forecast where I'd ended up, and happily so. And I certainly don't wish that upon them either.
Are you still excited getting out of bed every morning and taking this challenge on?
Absolutely, yeah. I drive to work, yeah. So I don't slow down for the orange light, mate. I want to get in there, and I want to be around people, and I want to be around activity and deals, and I want to, otherwise, don't do it at all. So there's no middle ground, and that's not a. I don't think that's there's anything profound in that, but there's no middle ground. Just green light or red light.
And Andrew, if you were going to look back at that young man all those years ago, sitting in England, Northern England, got the wrong shoes on the AstroTurf, giving it his best shot, what advice would you give him now?
None that he'd listen to. So, you know what? I wouldn't give him any advice, mate. Again, not for everybody, but for me, this professional journey or this life journey, and those two things are intertwined. By the way, I don't have a clear delineation in my mind between personal and professional. It's just I think that's maybe another point of difference about the way I like to think about things. But what would I say to him? Nothing, as I said, nothing he'd listen to.
On that, Andrew, look, thanks for making the time to enjoy us today.
Well, Greg, thank you, and thanks to Blenheim Partners. Big fan of the podcast, and really grateful for the opportunity to have come and spoken to you here today. So thanks to you.
Well, you've been listening to No Limitations.